This is Dr. Lisa Marie Bobby, and you're listening to the Love, Happiness, and Success podcast.
Darling, you're my thrill. When I'm near, my whole world stands still. Oh, and baby,
She's so good, isn't she? That is Miss Danny Roundtree. The song is Magic, and I thought it was perfect for us today, but not for the reason that you might think. The song is called Magic, and she's singing about how magic and in love she feels. And that's the myth about love, you guys. The myth is that it is magic. If you meet the right person, it's just easy and effortless, and you are swept off your feet, and you will be in blissful love forever. That is what we're sold from the time we are kids, really, and then arrive into adulthood with the not as exciting or fun reality that is not actually the way relationships work. They're not magic, but this is actually better than I'm making it sound, because if relationships are magic, it means that you have to find that perfect person that you can have this magical experience with, and anything else kind of means that you're with the wrong person, that there's some sort of intrinsic flaw in, maybe not your partner necessarily, but it's just like you're not compatible. And so the only answer in that case is to perhaps end a relationship and keep looking for the unicorn that you can have that magical experience with, right? So that's, option one. Option two, though, is if you buy into this idea that there's no magic, nobody actually has magic, and that all relationships have strategies. There are things we can and really must do in order to have a super high quality and amazing relationship with anyone. It's not magic. And the fact that it isn't magic means that it is within your control to make it happen, right? So if we take away the magic, what does that leave us with? Empowerment. That's a good thing, right? So that is what we are talking about today. And we're doing this a little bit differently. So I have experts on the show with me, like marriage counselors, people that have researched relationships. They know what they're talking about. And I love it because they provide you with really reliable, good information. But my guest today is not a marriage counselor. He is not a coach. He's not anything. He is a filmmaker. He is a filmmaker who created a documentary film where, as this kind of, relational novice, he went and talked to the thought leaders that are, wandering around the world today. The Gottmans, Dr. Bill Doherty. I mean, really knowledgeable people who are really at the cutting edge of new understandings of relationships. And he put together this film that has all of their best advice and insight into what relationships really take to be successful, what messes people up, and most importantly, the strategies that you can use to make your relationship as amazing as it could possibly be. So I'm excited to talk with him. And again, so timely. I am hearing from so many of you, which I love, that your relationships are very much on your mind. So, we're still in this experience where we're spending a lot of time at home, perhaps with our partners. And for better or for worse, what is happening, which I actually think is very exciting and cool, is that because of the togetherness and the lack of distraction in some ways, it is turning into a very, very interesting and productive growth opportunity for couples to work through some things that maybe has been on the back burner for a while, to spend enough time together where you're really able to have meaningful, deep conversations. There aren't as many distractions. You're not both running out the door. And this is also a time to really step it up with regards to your teamwork, to your compromising, to your generosity and kindness, not to mention emotional support. We've touched on all of those things in other podcasts recently, and I have more to come. But I hope that our topic today is one more tool and resource for you to continue this work that may be happening at your house. So we're going to talk to my guest, Roger Nygard. And before we jump into this, though, I do also want to remind you that another tool that you have available to you to support your relationship growth is my free relationship quiz. It's actually, I've been getting a lot of feedback from people lately that taking this assessment with their partner has launched a really productive, non-confrontational conversation about how they're each feeling, and it has created a path forward around specific recommendations for things to do differently. I've even had people tell me that taking this assessment, like just the questions that I'm asking, has turned on little light bulbs for them. Like, the fact that I'm asking about certain things, like, are you doing this or not doing this? Maybe things that they've never thought of before. And even just that, I think, has been like a cool educational experience for couples to do together. And so this is also available to you. If you want to do this, text REL quiz, no spaces, RELQUIZ, to the number 33777, and you'll get a link to take the quiz. You'll take it, you'll get a little report. You can share the quiz with your partner and, do that and have it be a launching point for a great conversation, or maybe listen to this podcast together or some of the others that I've done recently, so that you can use this opportunity to grow and strengthen your relationship. All right. So now, Roger, welcome to the podcast. I am so excited to speak with you and to learn more about all of the interesting things that you discovered in your new film, which is called The Truth About Marriage, yes?
Right. Yeah, I'm not a doctor. I'm not a psychologist. I'm not a guru. I'm not a life coach. All I am is a filmmaker. I had a lot of questions, and I set out to try to solve this mystery for myself about relationships and why I'm such a failure at relationships, or I felt like it. And I made a documentary of the process.
Oh, well, there sounds like there's a story to be told about the inception of this. How did you, because you've made films on a number of different topics, and I'd love to hear more about your work, but what was it that prompted an exploration into this particular area? Was there a moment of like, I have to know?
When I start out with a topic, it has to be an idea or a subject that obsesses me enough to keep me occupied, keep me interested, because documentaries take years, and this film took 7 years to finish. And if I go back in time 7 or 8, 9 years ago, I just finished my prior documentary, which is called The Nature of Existence. And in that film, I asked the question, why do we exist? What's the point? Why are we here? What's the point of everything? Which was what I was obsessed with at the time. Invariably, a question comes up at film festivals, which is what you do with indie films. You go to the film festival circuit. The question comes up at the Q&A, what's next for you? And somebody asked the question when I was at Dallas at the USA Film Festival, what's the next project? And if you don't have an answer, you sound like an idiot. So on the spot, I kind of made a joke. I said, well, having just studied existence itself, the only possible topic that could be even more inexplicable would be marriage. And that got a laugh, so I worked into my routine, and then I started thinking, that is really a good topic that I am obsessed
I should
with.
listen to myself.
Yeah, because I'm not married, and I've been in love 3 times, and the way I knew it was love is because of how much it hurt.
Oh.
And so each of those 3 times, I could imagine myself being with that person forever, having children, maybe getting to the altar, but I never did. It always ended, and it was kind of it was very difficult and disastrous.
Aww.
And so I was just wondering, why can't I get there? And the more I researched it, the more I found out. I mean, we all know this 50% figure, right? That 50% of marriages fail, and the other 50% that are success, by definition, because they don't fail, are very difficult or take a lot of work to keep going.
Yeah.
So then I began to formulate my next question, which is, why are marriages or why are relationships so hard for people? There must be a reason for that. And so as the documentarian and sort of the investigator, I set out to answer that question.
Then what happened? I'm already on the edge of my seat. Well, and I have to tell my listeners, I've seen the trailer of this film, and you had the opportunity to talk to some extremely interesting people. The Gottmans, Bill Doherty. I don't know how well known he is. I'm a big fan of his work, and other like really knowledgeable people on this subject. And so, and actually, let me back up for a second. I think one of the reasons why I'm so interested to talk with you is because, me and like the people that I work with, marriage and family therapist types, we go to school for this stuff. And, the stories about like the nature of the Buddha is to kind of go back to that beginner's mind. Like sometimes I think that we have such well-developed ideas about what works and what people should be doing that we acquired through, education and all of that, that to see it with like fresh eyes and an observer sort of role, like the one that you've taken, could maybe generate a lot of really interesting insights that, experts can miss. Right?
It's funny that you say that, because at another film festival in Minneapolis, which is where Bill Doherty lives, he came to the screening and was nice enough to come up for the Q&A afterwards, and this question came up from the audience. Are you married? And I said, no, I'm single. Well, why should we listen to what a single person has to say about marriage?
Because I'm watching you.
Right. And Dr. Doherty answered the question from his perspective. He said that when I came to interview him, it was unlike any interview he'd ever done, because as a single person, I was asking all these naive questions and I was going wherever it took us.
Yeah.
Because normally, Dr. Doherty said, when couples come to him, as obviously he's a therapist and they already have their theory of marriage, and they're looking for him to confirm their own theories.
Yeah.
They're starting from a place already of having their mind made up about things. I have no idea what marriage is because I haven't experienced it. And so he said it was it was the most enjoyable experience as an interview he's had, because here's this guy with no theory, just willing to go wherever the information takes me. And that's, as a filmmaker, what my goal is as a documentarian.
So interesting. Well, I could totally see that, the fresh perspective. And we're talking about Dr. Doherty. Maybe that would be a good entry point into this topic, unless you think that there's a better one that we should begin.
There's nobody better than Dr. Doherty.
Well, I actually had the privilege of attending a training that Dr. Doherty did. This was many years ago. But I think that he, my understanding anyway, is that he is best known for his work around discernment counseling, and this is like a very different approach to couples counseling. And the basic idea is that a significant percentage of couples who like show up for AKA couples counseling or marriage counseling are not in any position to work on the relationship and try to improve it, because at least one of them is totally ambivalent about whether or not they even want to continue. And so, and then I think a lot of rookie couples counselors or people that haven't had the opportunity to train with Dr. Doherty can kind of jump right in and talk about, okay, everybody, this is how we fix it. And it always fails, because one person is like, yeah, no, I don't want to do that. And so it really talks about like this pre-work period where you're figuring out what are the strengths, what are the opportunities, what are the limitations, and like acquiring the motivation to even work on it or not. And sometimes the outcome is the or not. So that is my sort of synopsis of Dr. Doherty's work, my understanding of it anyway, what I've been exposed to. So you went with your camera and sat at the feet of this master and
I was actually
asked
sent
questions.
To him.
And then what happened?
Well, I started with another therapist in Minneapolis named Jonathan Friel, who was the one who recommended Dr. Doherty. And Dr. Friel said a very interesting thing, that when couples come to him, he said, I cannot be invested. He'll tell them, I cannot be invested in whether or not you make it as a couple. However, what I can do is be invested in helping you both become the best selves that you can be. And then it's up to you. I thought that was a really interesting way of looking at it. And then similarly, Dr. Doherty said that his goal is, his preference is that they save the relationship. And he works with that in mind. And he's used to people, as you outlined, being on different, having different investments in it. Sometimes, though, you don't know what your investment is. You think you know. But I remember myself speaking personally, this is how I knew I was in love, because it was so painful. When I broke up, I thought I was done. I didn't need to be in a relationship with this person. And I broke it off, my first love. And it was so painful. And I was shocked. And I thought, I had no idea I was in love. And this is what it felt like. And I was so attached to this person. I didn't know what I needed until until I was in pain. And another thing Dr. Friel said was that often when couples come to him, it's like going to a hospital and saying, I broke my leg 6 years ago. Can you fix it?
Right. Oh, I'm so glad you're saying that.
How much better would it be if you go long. Right as soon as you have a problem?
Yeah.
And one of the things all the experts agreed upon, if someone's listening right now and considering getting married, a couple is considering marriage, the best thing you can do to improve your chances for longevity and for happiness is to do premarital counseling. And that's because it's not about getting into deep therapy. It's just about knowing the rules before you enter this game, this union, this contract. Know what the rules are so you can eliminate assumptions and frustrations and surprises. So one of the things I did when I wrote a companion book that goes with the movie.
I didn't know that.
And because I had so much wealth of information, I thought I've got to put this somewhere. And at the end of the book, I put a couple's priorities checklist, which is what my recommendation, and also I got this from multiple people, therapists, and the divorce attorney I spoke to. They all said what couples should do, some version of this is fill out a couple's priorities checklist and then exchange them and discuss them, and with the purpose of making a mutual priorities checklist of what it is you both agree on and want and desire out of the relationship. How many children do you think you should have? Where would you like to live? How light or dark do you want the bedroom? Is the TV on all night while you're sleeping okay or not? Just discussing all these things, knowing the rules before you get in is going to increase your chances for success astronomically. And who does that? Very few people.
You know, we try to get people to do that and come in and do premarital counseling. And you know what's so interesting is that I have talked to a number of people who actually have anxiety about doing that because they fear the unknown. They're like, but what if something comes up that means that we're going to have a problem and I really want to get married? And so they kind of gloss and they go into going into wedding planning. But I think also too is that at that stage of relationship, people are so in love, like they have their little love glasses on and they think
the myth
that's
of
the way.
exceptionalism is what Dr. Doherty calls it. Everyone thinks they're exceptional. It's not going to happen to them. They're going to none of these statistics are going to apply to them. And of course, they're in for a shock because it applies to all of us.
Yeah. It really does. That sooner or later there are going to be little fissures and cracks that are not anything bad or wrong. It's just simply what happens. And you're saying to have your little toolbox packed and ready so that you can whip out the tool, or be ready to get help so that you don't, come in with a badly healed leg that had been broken 6 years before.
Yeah. Well, my goal in making the film, ultimately what it coalesced into was, the first half of the film and the book is really talking about, here are the problems. Okay, here's why we're having so much trouble. Now, what do we do about it? What are some just simple, basic things anyone can do right now to change the trajectory of their relationships? Because imagine if someone had taught me this or taught any of this in high school. There's no class for relationship. The most important thing you're going to do in your life is have a relationship. But no class, no guidance. They kick you out, figure it out on your own, and make mistakes.
Yeah, good luck with that. Yeah, like and people do. They do what their parents did. They do whatever they absorbed, sort of symbiotically in their family of origin, and it with mixed results, as you so well know. So listen, I really want to talk about what you discovered as being like some of the things that people can do to make it better. But before we do, you mentioned that through this process, you gained a lot of awareness and insight into what exactly people are doing wrong that messes them up, that they maybe don't even realize that they're doing, because nobody does it intentionally. We sort of blunder into it. Yeah,
a lot of it is not their fault. It's one of the social psychologists I spoke with, who looks at obviously culture and society, and what he discovered is that we are living in a culture that expects us to behave in a certain way. Unfortunately, many of those expectations are out of sync with what's natural for human nature. That's because our culture changes and evolves faster than we do. And so we're all frustrated trying to reach these ideals that are virtually unreachable for all of us. We set these goals for ourselves and our partner, and we're upset and disappointed when they can't reach it, when we can't reach it. I mean, a soulmate implies I won't be attracted to anyone else. But then we find we're attracted to people because it's natural. You don't change to a different person when you start a relationship. You still have feelings. One of the couples I profiled in the documentary is a polyamorous couple in Eugene, Oregon. And what I discovered about them that to me was fascinating is that they're a very high-functioning couple. They do very well together, and it's not because they're polyamorous and have sex with other partners occasionally, which they do, but it's because in order to be polyamorous, they have to communicate. They have to be open about who they are with each other. Polyamory can't happen without complete openness, and that openness now allows them to interact better as a couple, regardless of who their sexual partners are or aren't, if you even put that aside. So one of the answers is, first of all, acceptance of yourself and who you are as a species, as an animal, as a Homo sapien. What is natural for you and your partner, and accepting of that. You can't accept your partner to be something other than what they aren't. They are. Yeah. You can change behavior, but you can't change what you are. And you can only change behavior for a certain period of time before it comes back or comes out in other ways, in frustrations and unhappiness, which leads to anger and arguments, conflicts, and then you've got conflict resolution. We don't know how to resolve conflict as well as we might. So there's multiple layers, but back to sociology, societies can make it easier to be a couple. For example, there was a study in Iceland where in Iceland they passed a law that said that both the mother and father could take maternity leave for 6 months or 8 months or whatever it was, which is kind of unheard of here, right? You wouldn't have that in the United States. But they looked at the divorce rate before and after this law. So they had a case study. They've got before and after. They can compare the couples. And the divorce rate went down by, I think it was 14%, simply by passing a law that gave men maternity leave.
That's great. I could see that because there's so much stress and trauma around roles and who does what, and people feeling like their relationships are out of balance, particularly after that first child. That makes perfect sense to me.
The easier you make it for couples to exist in their society, the easier it is to be a couple and to be happier as a couple.
Yeah.
It's the safety nets, giving couples safety nets to help them back on track when things aren't going well. If they don't have that safety net, when we're feeling, Dr. Doherty talked about this, when I'm feeling unhappy or upset with my relationship, or I don't know why, I just feel unhappy, well, it must be my partner's fault because that's who I'm looking at, that's who's near me. It must be because of them. And it might have nothing to do with them. It might be the environment that you're immersed within.
Yeah, or, I'm going to say it, something inside of yourself that needs to be looked at too. Yeah,
right. No one wants to look in the mirror and start with yourself and
just place blame.
Realize, maybe the problem is you. And I came to realize the problem was me, when I started making this documentary. At least, certainly 50% of it is my fault, if not more. I was often sabotaging things unknowingly, not realizing that what I needed was different than what my partner needed. You know, Gary Chapman talks about the 5 love languages, right? Learning that the way you need to receive love may be different from the way your partner needs to receive love. And if you give your partner love the way you need to receive it, but it's not the way they need to receive it, it doesn't count. And so one of the best things you can do is learn about yourself and learn about your partner's needs.
Definitely.
I was once dating this woman many years ago, and I was having a lot of trouble and a lot of difficulty, and I finally just said to her, just kind of out of frustration, just make me a list of what you want. And she said, okay. She made me a list of 10 things she wanted, and I was so happy. It was wonderful.
Was
she
anything on the list that surprised you?
Well, yeah, all of it.
Really?
Of course I should be, hold my hand, tell me you miss me. I mean, I want to, open the car door for me. I can do those things. In fact, I want to do those things. And I didn't realize how important it was, and that it made such a difference. And so now, going forward, I have carried that through into the future. And why not? I mean, I love holding hands. And why not open the car door for people? I do it for everybody. No, it's politeness.
I know, but then it's going to get that's where it gets hard though, because then sooner or later you're going to meet someone who's like, don't open my door. What are you trying to say? You're like patriarching me, you know, like that kind of thing. And it's like, it's so individual, but it's like exactly what you're saying. You have to discover who your partner is and then show them love in the ways that work for. I had the opportunity once to speak to Dr. Helen Fisher, who is just a wealth of information. And she had a little pithy thing. She was like, it's not the golden rule where you do unto others the way that you like to be treated. It is the platinum rule where you treat others the way that they want to be treated. And that is so true. And it's fairly simple to do. Like it's not complicated usually.
Yeah, these things are not complicated. They're easy to do. No one tells you until you step on a landmine and you go, what happened?
I know.
How do I fix this?
The problem so often, though, is that going back to what you said before, that a leg gets broken, an attachment gets ruptured, a hurt happens 6 years earlier. And between now and then, when people aren't talking about it, there's like all of these resentments that build up and frustrations and little narratives that people are creating in their mind about the character of their partner. And it starts for them to feel impossible to do the things that they intellectually know that they should do because they don't want to, because they're mad and they're hurt and they're very focused on their needs not getting met. And it's like that's I think the risk for waiting too long and letting this crap build up.
Yeah, it's natural. That's the footing we start out on. Part of the problem. When you were dating, you go out on a date, put on this best version of, here's the best version of me, which is a facade. It's not who I am really. Yeah. And let's say you end up getting married or dating for many years. Eventually, this mask is going to slip, and then you're going to see the real me, and it's going to be a shock or a surprise or a disappointment. It's inevitable because that's the footing we start out on instead of full disclosure, who we are, here's who I am, choosing someone that you can accept. First, acceptance, right? The key to happiness is acceptance, accepting yourself and then accepting your partner. As Dr. Pat Allen says, you don't have nagging rights. You only have leaving rights. You can't nag someone into being a different person. Yeah. But if they're not the right person for you, the best thing you can do is say, I've really enjoyed getting to know you, but it's time for me to move on. Yeah. And it's hard to say that. Another person in the documentary put it very simple, a great rule of thumb. Be kind and ask for what you want. How often do we ask for what we've got to tell your partner what you want? No one's a mind reader. No one knows. They don't know. So first you got to discover for yourself what you really need, and then communicate it to your partner. And it's a lot harder than it sounds, but once you do it, it's easy.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I totally get that, and you're talking too about something that I think is so crucial and not openly discussed, and which is that, and you hear this as a marriage counselor, right? People come in and they say, "You've changed." And no, they have not actually changed. This is who they really are, and that perhaps you didn't have all the information in the beginning. But then, and this is where it can get so hard. People will fight tooth and nail to try to get their partner to be who they want them to be, who they hope they could be, and they have all these ideas about if my partner was XYZ different, things would be so much better. And it never works, rarely. But B, the path that you were just talking about, that path of acceptance, like, let's take a look at who this person really is and focus on the things that are good about them and that you like about them and that are working for you, and kind of reinfuse your relationship with that tolerance and respect. In my experience, that is actually like the paradoxical path to true love, as opposed to this like overlaying your fantasies and expectations and ideals over this framework that is not going to be that, but it could still be something really great. Did you find that?
Yeah, well, I think what they call somebody called it. You have a personal map that you overlay somebody. This is the ideal person. Yeah. And when we first meet someone, we assume this is what we're projecting onto them, all of these wonderful blanks. Qualities. Yeah. Right. And then they're not that way in every case, and what can you do, right? You just it's too easy now to swipe right and try again. Yeah. In the old days, it wasn't that easy. Mm-hmm. In my documentary, I interviewed my grandmother when she was 100 years old. Oh. And I asked her about, when love and how did she meet my grandfather. And she said that when she was young, when she was 18 or 19, there was a knock at the door one day, and they opened the door. This guy was there. He said, "Nygard's the name, and I'm here to marry your daughter." And so like, he joined the family, right? And they got married. That's how it happened.
Had she not met him before he was like knocking at the door, being like, "I'm here"?
No, right. Never met. And he had noticed her in the neighborhood apparently, and came courting one day. Yeah. And then, as she said, he joined the family. Wow. Now we can't. Nowadays we've got so many choices, so many dating apps, so many options. There's millions, billions of people, and it's human nature to think I settled too soon, I shouldn't settle yet, this one's not good enough, there's got to be a better one. Where what you're doing is you're not trading up, you're just trading one set of problems for a new set of problems, and you're throwing away all your shared experiences that are binding you, helping to bind you together. Yeah. Eventually, what do? You make a choice. You choose someone, and that's what helps keep you together. Is we all want to be chosen. We all want that feeling of being chosen above all others, and part of maintaining that bond is reaffirming that, making your partner feel like they're the one. Yeah. Even though, of course, it's difficult, and you're going to disagree, and you're going to have to. There are better ways to deal with conflict. If only someone had taught you. But that's where therapists come in, and that's why it's so important that therapists exist and counselors and people, because people don't know. No one's teaching them these better, simpler ways to interact and to deal with conflict. Like one of the pieces of advice I got from Dr. Bonnie Eaker-Weil and Dr. Pat Allen, they both said for conflict, if you've got an idea or something you want to talk about, let's say you want to talk about the garage, right? I mean, it's too messy or something's not right. Mm-hmm. The way to handle that with a man or the masculine is to make an appointment. Honey, I want to talk about the garage. When is a good time? Hopefully later today, if possible. And I can't today. Okay, how about tomorrow morning? Okay, 10 a.m. You write it down on a piece of paper. Now it's real. It's an appointment. The mind of the male mind, it is not good with ambush discussions. The female mind is much better. And I also like the way that you said the masculine mind, because and just to acknowledge, I think it's easy to go into like gender
generalizations in some ways, but like the approach that you're describing would work very well with me at my house, because I'm flying around like a blah, 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 and my husband is like, let's talk, and I'm like, I don't have time. And so like that, like make an appointment with me, and then I will show up and be like, I'll have my little notepad and be like, yes, what would you like to talk about? So the masculine action oriented mind versus the more feminine or receptive approach.
Exactly.
And you were
yes,
about to go on.
I have both masculine and feminine qualities,
We
and so
all
do you, right?
yeah.
And sometimes when I'm in my feminine, I have the needs that of feminine energy needs, and vice versa. On average, I have more masculine than feminine, which 80% of men do on average, and so that's how it averages out. But we're all like, the work environment is everyone's masculine, and part of the passion problem is that everyone's masculine. You don't have the spark of opposites. We're designed we're designed to complete each other, not to duplicate each other. And it works better, gay, straight, or otherwise, whatever it is. A partnership works better when you have a strong masculine and a strong feminine, or strong opposites of whatever the coefficient is for each person. Two masculines don't work together; they're going to butt heads. Two feminines don't work as well together, and so. Same for gay people, gay, straight, whatever.
Yeah.
When I am in my masculine, I'm not good with ambush discussions, especially dealing with emotions. And so if I have time to prepare emotionally and mentally, there's an appointment to discuss the garage tomorrow, I'm going to handle it much better. And the John Gottman talks about flooding a lot, how the masculine brain has about 15 minutes of discussing emotions before it gets overwhelmed. So you should set an appointment to discuss the garage, limit the discussion to 15 minutes, and then move on. Because if it goes beyond 15, you're not talking about the garage anymore. It's switching to other problems, and you're on a diversion. So that's one of the ways to handle it better, and also to consider that if your partner will never make that appointment with you, you're not in a relationship.
That is an excellent point. I love that. And you know what? There are people chasing their partners all over the place, trying to have those kinds of meaningful conversations and getting rejected and shut out and shut down. And you said it right there. That is not actually a relationship. Please elaborate.
It has to go both ways. It has to go both ways. And so you've given your partner a chance to set a time, and you're being very accommodating, and your thoughts have to be heard. And if I was to coalesce what I learned into two very simple concepts, this is what I took away from making this film. One of the most important things is that the masculine and the feminine have different needs, or like what I started calling them are relationship vitamins. The feminine vitamin, the feminine needs this. Guys, or when you're in your masculine, if you do one thing, and this will help you if you're stuck at home on house arrest, it's more important than ever to consider this, to help your relationship, to preserve it, to improve it. The feminine needs 15, 20, 30 minutes per day of active listening time. When you are present, and you start by saying, take your cell phone, put it on airplane mode, turn off the TV, make eye contact, and say, honey, how was your day? Honey, how are you feeling? And then listen. Shut up. Don't ask questions. Don't make suggestions. Don't fix anything.
Yeah.
She doesn't want your advice. She's processing the emotions.
Because again, at my house, this is my husband. He's like, let me tell you about the day I'm having. Right. He needs to talk.
Who's ever in their feminine needs that listening time, active presence, being present, and just being there to help your partner process the day's emotions. And then you end that period with a hug. And then you can go watch the game or go take care of all of your business or whatever. But about 15 to 20 or 30, give or take, minutes per day. And if the feminine doesn't get that nourishment, there'll be frustration, then anger, then arguments, and problems, difficulties.
Yeah.
So you've got to make the effort. It's not that much. Right. It's not that hard. Try the experiment for a week. You're going to find everything's going to improve, You're going to both be happier. The sex is going to get better. Passion's going to come back. Everything's going to improve by fulfilling that need. But also, as the feminine, don't take advantage of it. Don't ask for more than 20 minutes a night, or that precious resource will dwindle over time.
Well, and can I actually just add something? Is that one of the things that I hear a lot of about is that not just women, people with a more feminine, like I would like to emote, please, and I want you to be present while I do that sort of orientation, really also want that back from their partner. And they get very frustrated when their more masculine counterparts do not want or need that in the same way, so that it feels like they're doing all the talking and they're sort of like an egg, like a black box sitting on the other side of the coffee table or whatever. And they really want to hear, like, okay, so now you tell me how you feel. And they get frustrated when that doesn't always come back. And so what I need to work with people around as a counselor is like helping them understand that there are different ways of relating, and that those ways are equally valid. And that just because your partner does not relate in the same way that you do, or that you would like them to, doesn't mean that there's anything wrong necessarily. And that your partner probably has ways of connecting that are very meaningful to them, that they might appreciate, but it might look different than the way that you do it. Because otherwise I think people can, and I hate to use this word because it's a negative word, but like people can get very judgy with their partners, like you should be more like me. You should want what I want. Right.
They don't. They're different. That's why you're together. That's why you have passion. That's why you have a spark, because you're different. You complete each other. And the partner that needs to be heard, whose feelings need to be heard more, has a partner who, if you ask them how they're feeling, they don't like it because it feels like mothering. And so what you do is, instead of, I'm quoting Dr. Pat Allen, instead of asking your masculine partner or the person who's in their masculine how they're feeling, ask them what they're thinking. Because it's a different side of the brain, and that's what they're more comfortable with. So if you just change that word, ask the feminine, the one with the feminine needs, how are you feeling? Ask the one with the masculine needs, what are you thinking? You still get to talk and exchange, but it's on a level that both their needs are being met.
Great point. That's a great point. And so, hey, I know that our time together is limited, and I want to hear a little bit more about a couple of specific things. Okay, first of all, when I was watching the trailer of your movie, there was an interview snippet with one person. I do not remember his name. I don't know that I wrote that down. But talking about how there are differences in perceptions of attraction related to menstrual cycles. And what the little bit that I know about this is that hormones really have a lot to do with how we perceive others, as do mood states, interestingly. But the little snippet of advice that I heard was not anything that I had heard before. The recommendation was that partners thinking about marriage should remove any type of hormonal birth control for a year and see if they still like each other.
Isn't that wild? Yeah, that was Dr. Chris Ryan who talked about that. What they have found when they've done studies is that when a woman is on the birth control pill, this is not any surprise, but the birth control pill makes the woman's body think she's pregnant all the time, and so that she won't ovulate or conceive a child. And when a woman is pregnant, she has different needs mentally, physically, emotionally than when she's not pregnant. And so if your body thinks you're pregnant all the time, you're going to be attracted to the men that a pregnant woman would be attracted to versus a woman who's not pregnant would be attracted to. Those could be different types, different personality types. And they sometimes find a couple, let's say they're dating, she's on the pill the whole time they're dating, they get married, they decide to have a child, she goes off the pill, and suddenly she's not attracted to him anymore. And they blame it on they've been together too long, or the relationship has gone south, or they're both too tired. They don't know that it's a simple hormonal reaction. So your ideal is to date off the birth control pill and make sure that you like each other for who you are, not just when you're in a pregnancy phase.
Yeah.
Free will is a little bit of a fantasy because there's a lot
That's
going on
true.
beneath our conscious awareness, and our bodies are doing a lot of work and prompting us to feel certain ways that are based on hormonal or cycles or
The physiological thing. Yeah, for sure.
Medications you're taking. There's so much going on. Yeah, and that's one of the factors.
And just out of curiosity, and I ask this because I'm going to out myself now as a card-carrying nerd. Is there like a research study that measured subjective levels of attraction with birth control pills and without them?
Well, there's a couple of. There was one called the T-shirt study. Klaus Wedekind was a Swiss psychologist who took 40 T-shirts and 40 women, had 40 men wear these T-shirts, 47, whatever the number was, for a week. Each one wore the T-shirt for a week, and then the women would all smell the T-shirt and rank them by attractiveness. Which one is the most attractive? And then they looked for correlations. Well, why are they deciding this shirt is attractive and this one isn't? And the women had different opinions. And they found it was based on the immune system, something called the MHC. There's something like 100 different potential immune system genes. So all of us are on a spectrum, and we have slightly different immune systems. The ideal for you or me is someone who is the opposite, has not the similar, but the most dissimilar immune system possible. And the way we perceive that is passion. Wow, that person's hot. I'm really attracted to that person. Or, when you have a first kiss and sometimes, no spark. Really attractive person, but no spark. Or, wow, we were so attracted to each other. That's because your bodies have evaluated each other. And one of the things is immune systems. And the reason that our bodies naturally discern immune systems is because our offspring has a better chance of drawing from two dissimilar immune systems as opposed to having the same immune system from both parents. Better chance for survival. And we feel that as passion.
Fascinating. That is so interesting. And
there's another
now
study, too. I'll give you a second study, which is that they did a study of strippers where they had them fill out their tips by hour during the month.
Roger, they're entertainers.
Yes, they are.
Sorry. So
very entertaining.
Well, I have a soft spot for entertainers. But there was a study that looked at dancers, entertainers, and their tip jars, and then what happened?
Yes, and they kept track of their tips for the month by the hour, and the tips were the highest when they were ovulating, and the lowest when they were having their period. Somehow, men sensed when they were the most fertile. And we're throwing the money, giving them more money, more tips during that period.
Well, women feel more sexual around the time that they're ovulating, and that might come across behaviorally too. That is very interesting. Yeah,
the way they behave, the type of clothing they wear, their attitude, the skin changes, skin tone changes. There's a lot of cues. Yeah. But if you ask a man what he's looking for, he would have no idea. But somehow he's sensing it.
Well, this is so interesting and important for anybody, particularly not just coupled people, but dating people, to keep in mind. And before we move on to our next topic, though, I feel that it would be irresponsible of me to not also just add briefly that there are absolutely these kinds of physiological based differences in chemical attraction and feeling these intense feelings. That, though, those feelings are not always or even often a reliable indicator of whether or not that person is going to be a good partner for you. Or that there is like a high quality relationship potential. People get extremely fixated on chemistry or lack of it, and will oftentimes go towards people that they have like these intense feelings for. And that can be a recipe for a highly toxic relationship if you get sort of emotionally / physiologically welded to someone who you are not compatible with in terms of values, temperament, or God forbid, who doesn't treat you well. And that And many times those feelings of chemistry can be more prominent in relationship pairings where there's a lot of anxiety and uncertainty and like a lack of emotional safety. And so I wanted to add that because I always worry when people think, ooh, yes, chemistry as being like a criteria that's a very important thing for a relationship, because it can really lead you down an unhappy path if you make that more important. Not that you shouldn't have some chemistry, obviously, but cannot be like the biggest deal, because it doesn't end well, Roger.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, those two different chemistry matches that when a woman is taking birth control versus not are not, one is not, that man is not better or worse than the other. They're different qualities. And when a woman is taking birth control or is pregnant, the qualities she looks for in a man is reliability and long-term longevity. Who's a good partner for the long term? That's who she's attracted to. More so because that's who you want around when there's a baby. So those are good qualities to have, and it's just good to be aware that what you desire changes, and you go through cycles. Men go through cycles too. We all do, and the best thing you can do is just be aware of it. And so you accept it and understand it.
That is fantastic advice. And hey, Roger, I could seriously talk to you for like 4 hours, and I cannot wait to see the full movie. But when you and I were chatting briefly before we started recording, you mentioned that recently you circled around and got back in touch with a number of the relationship experts that you interviewed for your film to ask them specifically about their thoughts related to this whole quarantine experience, because it's really true. And you're probably aware of this. There was a report that came out that in Wuhan, China, after their like really intense quarantine period lifted, there was a big spike in the number of couples filing for divorce. And I have my own theories about why this might be true, but it is absolutely irrefutable that most couples are dealing with a very different lifestyle and level of like day-to-day togetherness, and also really needing to restructure their roles and responsibilities, and kids running around constantly without the benefit of school or babysitters. And so this is a intense time for couples. What did your relationship experts tell you about how to handle this?
Right, yeah. I did ask that question. What can people do to help preserve their relationships or improve them when they're, because no one's used to being stuck together like this, and this is no joke. This is a very serious trial that couples are going through, and there are some things to keep in mind that can help you. And the first is we already discussed, which is making sure your feminine side gets the nourishment it needs with listening, being present. The masculine side also needs something. The masculine goes through this cycle of connection. The masculine wants to connect just like the feminine, but also needs to disconnect. Feminine wants 24/7 connection inherently. Masculine wants to connect, but once he has that connection, he begins to yearn for freedom and needs to disconnect. And he goes through an orbit, and once he's out here, once the masculine is orbiting away, he misses her and wants to reconnect again. And it's inevitable, it's continuing, it's ongoing, and if you try to get in the way and stop it, you're going to have frustration, then anger, and then conflict. So you've got to allow for the disconnection. One way to facilitate that is for the masculine, when you're in your masculine and you need to disconnect, announce your disconnection. Honey, I'm going to go to my office and do some work. I'm really looking forward to seeing you at dinner at 5 o'clock. Or during normal times, honey, I'm going away for the weekend, going fishing with my buddies. I'm so looking forward to seeing you at 7 o'clock on Sunday when I get back. You've also announced when you'll reconnect. So now she knows that you're disconnecting, when you're going to reconnect. She is secure about it, and it's natural. Part of what we can do, just as a corollary to that, is while we're on this lockdown frame of mind, is designate areas of wherever you are, wherever you live, that are his and hers, masculine and feminine, and continue to separate in the amount of hours you used to separate. If you used to go to work for 8 hours a day, go to your space for 8 hours a day, and then reconnect again after that time period to sort of maintain that same cycle of connection and disconnection.
Well, and again, to add that like, and you use the term masculine and feminine. I totally get that. And I think of it almost as being like more action oriented and more like feeling oriented personalities. And that again can be independent of actual gender, because like the pattern that you're describing, Roger, is exactly what we're doing in my house. But I'm the one who's like, okay, got to go to work. I'll be back. I'll talk to you later, like that kind of thing. So I just wanted to say that for couples there. But you're also saying what I think is important is to be tolerant of time together and time apart, and like creating spaciousness in your relationship, even though you may be in physical proximity, that there can still be like that psychological distance, and that's a good thing. And there's an ebb and flow.
Yes.
Yeah.
When someone is in their masculine or has disconnected, respect that. Don't bother them. Leave them alone. Let them recharge and return to you. That's one thing.
Yeah.
Another very important piece of advice that I got from this is really Dr. Gottman's main thing. You know how he can predict how couples, watching a couple for 5 or 10 minutes, he looks for a certain cue that he can predict with 90% accuracy if they're going to stay together. Amazing. And how happy they will be, which is the presence of contempt or criticism or condescension, rolling of the eyes, dismissiveness.
Yep.
So for the duration of an event like this, ban criticism from the house. As though criticism, as the rabbi I interviewed put it, he said, imagine criticism causes the coronavirus. Banish it from the house during this entire period. And that's one of the best things you can do to help maintain a relationship.
Oh, I couldn't agree more. To whatever it is, like just make rule. You know, like you wouldn't call your partner a name. You wouldn't throw something at them, and that contemptful, like critical language is just as toxic. And to really instead pump up the appreciation and kindness and consideration, and even like compliments. Like,
right.
You
Gratitude
smell good. Yeah.
Compliments,
like
gratitude. Thank
you for whatever it was that you did. I mean, like, find something, the littlest thing can make such a big difference.
It must be vocalized daily. This is another rule. For the masculine needs to be reminded of this to a greater extent, the masculine part, that you must vocalize your gratitude. Lots of thank yous and lots of compliments. It goes a long way. Saying nothing is not going to help as much as expressing gratitude. And there are studies, again, about this, how there's something called capitalization. Have you heard of that?
I'm not sure. Tell me a little bit more. Maybe
capitalization is a form of gratitude that where your partner, let's say your partner at the end of the day or during the day says that something really great happened to him or her. What you do is capitalize on that by saying, wow, that's fantastic. I'm so happy for you. You've now capitalized on their good fortune and reflected it back on them in a positive way. If you don't do it, it counts against you. If you
do not acknowledge,
right. And if you do it, you're both going to be happier, not just today, but all week long. It has lasting benefits. So that's another really important thing to practice: gratitude and capitalization.
Allow me then, Roger, for a moment to express my appreciation and gratitude to you for taking the time to speak with me today and share all of these just amazing ideas and tips. And I think in a very concrete and understandable way. I really appreciate this. And I would also like to congratulate you on this amazing achievement and this film and the fact that you got, the people sharing their top tips. And clearly it has gotten so many rave reviews and positive feedback. And now tell us a little bit more about that part and where people like myself who are extremely interested in watching this can find it, as well as maybe some of your other work.
My film is called The Truth About Marriage, and it's a documentary where I interviewed
everyone,
15 psychologists and lots of interesting people about marriage and relationships. And The book has the same name, The Truth About Marriage. You can find both on the links at my website, thetruthaboutmarriage.com. Both are on Amazon. You can find the film on iTunes or Vudu or wherever you get your video on demand. And you can reach me, too, through my website at thetruthaboutmarriage.com or rogernygard.com. I love hearing from people. And I look forward to your comments, thoughts, reviews. And please do post reviews if you like the film. Especially for an indie film like this, it makes a huge difference if you do that.
I could totally see that. I will be sure to watch this film, and when I do, I will leave a review because I really appreciate this. I want to see more from you, so this is wonderful.
Thank you.
Well, thank you again for your time today, and I'll look forward to reconnecting.
Oh, it's been a pleasure talking. Yeah, anytime.
Keep myself from falling in, but I never win. It's like magic. It happens all over again and again and again.
I've been waiting on you. Tell me, when are you coming home?
Dear Daddy, wish you were true.
I wish you were true.
But oh Lord,